Chapter 783. Everyone was shocked. Jian Shai froze for a moment before he continued to ask, "Whirling lotus? Is it the legendary whirling lotus that can bring the dead back to life?" Jiang Yuqing nodded his head. Yes. If it weren't for this, the third princess wouldn't have taken the risk to retrieve it. Song Luan said excitedly, "The third princess is truly filial to His Majesty. If we retrieve the whirling lotus, His Majesty's health will definitely improve." Jiang Yuqing's brows furrowed imperceptibly. His tone was slightly cold. "Leader Song is right. However, it's a pity that the whirling lotus hasn't been retrieved yet." Song Luan's face suddenly turned the color of a pig's liver. Many people around them couldn't help but laugh secretly. His bootlicking had failed miserably, and he was truly to blame. Song Luan felt that he had lost face. He mumbled, "The whirling lotus is a rare treasure in the world. It must be very difficult to retrieve it." I was too naive. Jiang Yuqing was too lazy to argue with him. He nodded his head and said, "You're right. The whirling lotus is indeed extremely difficult to get close to. Elder Qiu, she died to retrieve the whirling lotus." As soon as he said this, the huge clear flower palace suddenly quieted down. Everyone's expression changed. They didn't expect the situation to be so troublesome. Elder Qiu, she was an elder of the royal family. His strength was undeniable. Even he didn't manage to do it and died. This showed how dangerous the whirling lotus was. The whirling lotus grows in the mirror lake of the Great Desolation Swamp. Originally, we wanted to pluck it and bring it back for His Majesty to use. However, that mirror lake was a little strange. Even Elder Qiu, she couldn't escape. Therefore, we were worried about the safety of the soldiers and the disciples of the various sects, so we made a prompt decision and chose to come back. Jiang Yuqing's words not only explained the reason for Shangguan Wan's injury, but also the reason why everyone suddenly came back. This time, they came back in a hurry. It was bound to cause a great commotion in the entire West Hill City. Who knew how many guesses and rumors would appear in the open and in the dark? Jiang Yuqing didn't want to be criticized because of this. "I see. No wonder Her Highness the Third Princess brought people back so quickly. She was thinking about everyone's safety. What's so strange about that mirror lake? Why is it so dangerous?" After a short period of silence, everyone began to discuss among themselves. Obviously, all the guesses and complaints about Shangguan Wan and the others had quietly disappeared. Under such circumstances, who could reprimand them? Jiang Yuqing looked around, and when everyone was almost done speaking, he said, "Therefore, we came back this time not to cause unnecessary casualties. On the other hand, we wanted to find a few experts to go to the Great Desolate Swamp again and work together to retrieve the whirling lotus." The main hall fell silent. "What do you think?" After Jiang Yuqing asked, no one spoke for a while. Everyone secretly exchanged glances with each other, each of them thinking. There was no doubt that a treasure like the whirling lotus was fatally attractive to everyone. But at the same time, they had to consider their safety. Even Elder Qiu, she died there, so how many people could guarantee that they would be able to return safely and without worry? Most importantly, even if they took the risk and successfully retrieved the whirling lotus, they would still have to offer it to His Majesty. What could they gain? Everyone present was a big shot of high status, and every one of them was very astute. They either represented the entire clan or the entire sect. If something happened to them, it was unknown how many people would be implicated. Therefore, even if they were loyal and devoted to His Majesty, they still had to consider things that involved their own lives. No one spoke. The air seemed to have frozen. Jiang Yuqing's brows furrowed imperceptibly. He had expected that a large portion of these people would not be willing to take the risk, but he did not expect everyone to be like this. He hesitated for a moment and said, "I know that this trip is dangerous, and everyone has their concerns, but the whirling lotus is simply too important to His Majesty. Apart from the corresponding reward, apart from the whirling lotus, all the other herbs found will belong to everyone." Many people's eyes lit up. If that was the case, they could still consider it. Elder Qiu, she died because he was careless at the time, and because he went alone without anyone to support him. Everyone here is the most powerful cultivator in Tianling dynasty. If you all work together, surely it won't be a problem to take down the whirling lotus? Jianghu Cheng's words undoubtedly caused many people's hearts to waver. Since the whirling lotus could appear in Mirror Lake, there might be other treasures as well. As long as they made sufficient preparations, even if they really couldn't get it, they still had the ability to escape and wouldn't follow in Elder Qiuxi's footsteps. Right at this moment, a voice rang out. This old man is willing to go. Hearing that, everyone looked over and discovered that the person who spoke was actually Yuqi Song. Everyone, including Jianghu Cheng, was taken aback. Everyone present could possibly go, except for Yuqi Song. They felt that he was the least likely to go. There were only so few people left in Clear Void Pavilion now, and they were all relying on him, the pavilion master, to support them. Once something happened to him, wouldn't this Clear Void Pavilion be completely finished? Besides, Chu Luiyue and the others had all died in the Great Desolate Swamp, and he actually wanted to go to that sad place. What on earth was he thinking? However, in the face of everyone's doubtful gazes, Yuqi Song's expression was calm and indifferent. He had made up his mind. Jian Shai rubbed his chin. As the heavenly doctor, I naturally have to go and see what that whirling lotus looks like. I'll go too. At this moment, Chu Luiyue naturally did not know that in West Hill City, thousands of miles away, there was a group of people plotting to rush to the Great Desolate Swamp again. She was trapped in this small place, and the only thing she could do was cultivate. The founding father glanced at the hourglass beside him. Calculating the time, less than 10 days had passed in the outside world. However, more than half a year had passed in this place. Here, Chu Luiyue cultivated day and night. Her entire person seemed to have entered a meditative state. At first, the founding father was worried that Chu Luiyue would not be used to staying here for a long time. However, he did not expect her to be so determined. When she said that she wanted to cultivate, she wholeheartedly focused on this one thing. If it was someone else, they would have already felt bored and depressed. However, Chu Luiyue did not. Even the great ancestor was amazed by his patience. He could not help but be curious. He did not know how strong Chu Luiyue would be when she left this place. Time passed slowly. Qin Yi and the others who were waiting in the illusory fog forest had already endured for nearly half a month. At first, they would guess when Chu Luiyue would come out. However, they basically did not say anything now. The only thing they could do was to cultivate while waiting in silence. However, this tranquility was soon broken. Mobile users, please browse and read. For a better reading experience, please visit the website. Chapter 784. Yuqi Song glanced at Jianghu Cheng strangely and frowned slightly. Why did he suddenly mention Lu Yu's fiancée at this time? Not to mention that Chu Luiyue's situation had not been thoroughly investigated. Even if something really happened, her fiancé was not in West Hill now. How could he inform him? Not yet. Yuqi Song's expression was indifferent. Why did you suddenly mention him? Jianghu Cheng sized up the other party's expression and knew that the other party had doubts in his heart. Speaking of which, it's quite a coincidence. I've met that person once before. I heard that he is a prince of country Yaochen. When he was in Yaochen, the two of them were engaged. However, he doesn't seem to be in good health. I was just thinking that if he suddenly found out about what happened here, I'm afraid he wouldn't be able to bear it. I didn't expect eldest young master Jiang to know so much about these things. You know almost better than me, his master. Yuqi Song seemed to say unintentionally. Jianghu Cheng's expression stiffened. It was indeed a little strange for him to know about these things with his status. Oh, Elder Song, don't misunderstand. I don't mean anything else. You also know that Chu Luiyue is very famous in West Hill City. There must be many people who are very curious about everything about her. Even I am no exception. Jianghu Cheng straightforwardly admitted to this point. Because there was nothing to criticize. A prodigy who was outstanding in the entire West Hill would definitely attract a lot of attention. It would be strange if Jianghu Cheng did not know anything about her. As for her fiancé, I met him by coincidence and asked about him. Elder Song, you won't mind, right? Yuqi Song's expression was calm. Eldest young Master Jiang has his reasons for doing things. These words made Jiang Yuqing a little flustered, as if they were mocking him. But he still endured it. Let's not talk about this anymore. Let's find them first. Jiang Yuqing did not get any useful information from Yuqi-song, so he simply did not say anything more. Yuqi-song was an old fox and not easy to deal with. As for Chu Yue's so-called fiancé, he was just a sickly person, so why should he care about him? The next time they met, he would deal with it directly. This small interlude came to an end. They continued to walk into the forest. However, after about an hour, they still did not see anyone. Jian Shai frowned and looked at a withered tree in front of him. Wait, have we been here before? Yuqi-song said, You noticed it too? Jian Shai nodded and looked around. It seems like we've been running around in circles for the past hour. No wonder he couldn't find anything. Jiang Yuqing was stunned. Been here before? Are you sure? Jian Shai snorted and lifted his chin. I took a closer look at the patterns on the bark of that tree earlier. I'm sure that it has circled back. Xiahou Rong was shocked. Does this mean that we're going around in circles? The few of them fell silent. The situation couldn't be more clear. It was fine if one person saw wrongly, but since Jian Shai and Yuqi-song said so, there must be a problem. Even Song Wan was frowning. Jiang Yuqing also looked around in confusion. Strange, this didn't happen when we came here before. They originally thought that the miasma and tree roots were the most dangerous things in the mystic forest, but they didn't expect to encounter such trouble. Someone seems to have set up a Xian formation here, but at the same time, they also used some Chimen Duanjia to block the people who came in. Jian Shai murmured and looked at Yuqi-song. Elder Song, among us, you're the only one who has some research on this. Can you see anything? Yuqi-song specialized in celestial physician, but he also had some understanding of these strange things. The few of them looked at him. Yuqi-song was silent for a moment and shook his head. The other party is proficient in this and has set up a meticulous plan. I can't solve it either. Hearing his words, the others were all stunned. Jian Shai couldn't hide his disappointment. Then won't we be trapped here forever? What about the children? Yuqi-song turned around and pointed in a direction. That's the direction we came from. As long as we walk in that direction, we can leave this place. However, it'll be extremely difficult to enter. Jiang Yuqing's eyes suddenly moved. Could this be Qin Yi and the rest's plan? Who's Qin Yi? Xiahou Rong asked. The various aristocratic families didn't send anyone over, so they didn't know much about what happened here. Jiang Yuqing gave a simple explanation. Yuqi-song looked down thoughtfully and didn't say anything. Jian Shai asked curiously, if it's really them, why do they have to do this? Previously, Zhu Hong and the rest said that Qin Yi and the rest treated the children quite well. You can't judge a book by its cover. Song Wan interrupted him and mocked him. If they're really decent people, why would they stay in De Huang Swamp for such a long time for no reason? Besides, Chu Liwei snatched the 9-colored heavenly pheasant that they've been protecting. They might harbor a grudge and do something. Jian Shai glanced at him in frustration. This Song Wan really can't say anything decent. He's just afraid that others are better than him. My disciples have suffered heavy casualties, so I can't let everyone else be the same. Yuqi-song suddenly said, Let's go. Let's leave first and head to Mirror Lake since the other party doesn't want us to enter. Jiang Yuqing was a little hesitant and wanted to say something. However, since even Yuqi-song didn't intend to continue walking in, he naturally didn't have a say. The group quickly returned the way they came from. After walking for a long distance, Yuqi-song finally heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. He turned around with a deep gaze. So that person is actually back. Jiang Yuqing probably didn't expect this even in his dreams, right? Kacha. A fingernail-sized fragment fell from the crystal again. At this point, most of the crystal that was originally the size of 2 palms had been swallowed, and only the centermost piece was left. The 2 Tian baby was wrapped in it, and only a thin layer of shell was left on the outside. It was as though it would shatter with a knock. Of course, this energy was too massive. After Chu Liwei swallowed it, she didn't completely convert it into her own energy. Most of it was still stored in the water droplet. Despite so, Chu Liuyue's abilities still increased by a lot. After staying in this space for nearly a year, she finally touched the barrier of peak stage 5. Chu Liuyue melted and swallowed that fragment. She had done this countless times and could be said to be as smooth as flowing water. Then she looked at the opposite side. As long as she peeled off one more piece, the 2 Tian baby would be exposed. The heaven-wrecking holy seed seemed to have realized this as well and began to become restless. The surrounding space also started to vibrate faintly. Chu Liuyue had a thought. A crack appeared. A vast and majestic ancient aura erupted from it. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 785. Song Wan flew on his sword and flew over Mirror Lake. Looking down, it was a large piece of floating ice reflecting a cold luster. Looking from here, he could see that the ice layer was actually spreading outwards with the dancing lotus as the center. The closer it was to the dancing lotus, the thicker and smoother the ice layer was. Correspondingly, the further it was, the more fragmented the ice layer was. When it reached the dam where the 2 worlds met, there were only some small pieces of floating ice left. The so-called bridge made of ice didn't really connect the 2 sides. Because the distance in the middle was closer, the ice layer spread outwards and reached here first. At a glance, it did look like an ice bridge. Actually, there was still a short distance near the dam where the floating ice didn't condense. The water was sparkling, calm, and clear. Song Wan walked forward carefully. Anyway, regardless of whether the ice bridge was completely connected, he wouldn't walk on it. In fact, he wouldn't even get close to her. He heard what Jiang Yuqing said just now clearly. Who knew how these floating pieces of ice appeared? There might be some danger hidden below. Just like that, he only controlled his sword and flew across the lake, approaching the dancing lotus in the middle bit by bit. Seeing Song Wan go over, Jiang Yuqing looked at the remaining people. That dancing lotus is very strange. If we work together, the chances of success might be higher. The scene of Elder Qiushi being dragged under the ice layer was still vivid in his mind. Jiang Yuqing didn't dare to guarantee that Song Wan could do much better than Elder Qiushi alone. Xiahou Rong nodded. That makes sense. There's strength in numbers. If we work together, we can take care of each other. Then he also tiptoed and walked forward. Jian Shai looked at Yuqi Song. The 2 of them exchanged glances and moved out together. Song Wan heard their conversation clearly and couldn't help but look back. Seeing that these people had indeed caught up to him, his hanging heart finally calmed down. No matter what, the more people there were, the more confidence they had. Jiang Yuqing was at the back and also followed. Originally, he didn't want to do this. After all, he had seen with his own eyes how terrifying Mirror Lake was. Moreover, his body had not fully recovered yet. There were a few wounds on his body, and for some reason, his recovery speed was much slower than before. If it was in the past, it would have been healed long ago. There was no need for him to worry about it at all. But now, it kept going back and forth. Who knew if it was because of that tree root? However, since the seniors had already made their moves, he couldn't just stand by and watch. The few of them approached one after another. Finally, they formed a circle around the dancing lotus. It was noon, and the sun was hanging high in the sky. The bright sunlight shone on the surface of the ice, reflecting rays of dazzling light. However, they did not cover their eyes. Instead, they stared at the dancing lotus in front of them. The palm-sized flower had a total of 5 petals. Every petal was a translucent pinkish-white color, as if it was carved out of crystal jade. There was a thin layer of frost on the petals, making them look cold and noble to the extreme. So this is the dancing lotus. Song Wan couldn't help but mutter softly. It was a top-notch medicinal herb that only existed in legends. It was rare to see it in 100 years. He licked his slightly cracked lips, and greed and desire flashed across his eyes. He kicked with the tip of his foot, flipped his sword, and instantly held it tightly in his hand. From the looks of it, he clearly planned to cut it directly with his sword. Jiang Yuqing said, "Hold on." Song Luan was stunned. "What's the matter?" Jiang Yuqing looked at the sword in his hand and frowned. Back then, Elder Qiushi used a sword. They were standing outside at that time, and it was close to night, so they couldn't see clearly. However, he remembered clearly that Elder Qiushi was indeed dragged down after using a sword. It happened in the blink of an eye. Song Wan's heart skipped a beat. He hurriedly kept his sword and looked at the dancing lotus in shock. This thing is actually so strange? If using a sword doesn't work, how do we take it? We can't use our hands, right? Wouldn't that be more dangerous? Jiang Yuqing looked at Jian Shai and Yuqi Song. What do the two of you think? Both of them were celestial physician. Logically speaking, they should be more knowledgeable about this. Yuqi Song looked at the dancing lotus and sighed softly. Actually, to take this dancing lotus, it's both simple and difficult. The dancing lotus only blooms once every 500 years. Each time, it blooms for 5 years. If no one plucks it within these 5 years, it will become a seed again and go through another 500-year cycle. Therefore, it's most suitable to pluck it while it's still blooming. The medicinal effects are also the best. However, the dancing lotus is a rare treasure. Also, it's different from other treasures. It usually doesn't have high-level fiends guarding it. This causes its defense and attack to be extremely strong. If you want to pluck it safely, you need to use fresh blood as a guide. Jiang Yuqing frowned. Fresh blood as a guide? What do you mean? The smell of fresh blood will cause the dancing lotus to fall into a short slumber. As long as you smear blood on it, you can reduce its danger to the minimum. Song Wan interrupted. Then, this doesn't seem difficult? Jian Shai sneered. It's not difficult, but the cultivator must be at least a stage 8 warrior. Since you make it sound so easy, why don't you do it? Song Wan was very unhappy with this mocking tone. No matter what, he was still a peak stage 8 warrior. Could it be that he couldn't even take back such a small dancing lotus? What's so difficult about this? He clenched his teeth, raised his sword, and slashed his palm. Scarlet blood gushed out instantly and dyed his entire palm red. Then, he took a deep breath and stretched his hand forward. The dancing lotus swayed gently with the wind and didn't have any abnormalities. Song Wan calmed down and was about to grab the stem of the dancing lotus. Suddenly, the sound of something breaking through the air came from afar. Swoosh! The sound was sharp. The wind whistled. It went straight for Song Wan's glabella. Song Wan was shocked and immediately retreated while brandishing his sword. Clang! The sound of sharp weapons clashing suddenly came. Song Wan felt as if something had hit his sword harshly, and he instantly felt like he was bearing a heavy weight. His arm was directly numb from the shock. Song Wan took 2 steps back in a panic before stabilizing himself with much difficulty. He looked up in shock and anger, only to see a palm-sized piece of ice that had just split neatly from the middle and fell onto the surface of the lake. He looked down and saw that there was a missing piece on the ice layer not far away. Everyone was shocked when they saw this scene. To be able to casually use such a piece of broken ice to easily block Song Wan's attack and even gain the upper hand, the other party's ability was obvious. Song Wan's heart trembled slightly. Whew! After a while, the air in the distance suddenly rippled. A tall and slender black figure walked out from within. His voice was low and casual, like the wind brushing past the strings of a zither, but it also carried a superior and unparalleled arrogance. Sorry, that's my wife's flower. Digression, I won't be adding it today. Tomorrow at 12 a.m., please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from AI Network. Chapter 786. The person was wearing a black brocade shirt and didn't have any extra accessories. His long hair was draped over his shoulders, and he had a lazy and cold aura all over his body. He wore a silver mask that covered his face. Only a pair of eyes that were as deep as the starry night was like a whirlpool that had a fatal attraction. It was as if one would unconsciously sink into it if they looked at it any longer. Seeing the person, Song Wan and the others were secretly shocked. This man's aura was extremely obscure and powerful, and he was only stronger than them. Song Wan swallowed his saliva with difficulty. Who exactly are you? Who I am isn't important. That man's voice was casual as he chuckled softly. What's important is that you can't touch this flower. He's here for the dancing lotus? They looked at each other. Song Luan frowned and couldn't help but retort. Everything has a first come, first served rule. We came first, so this dancing lotus naturally belongs to us. Even if you're powerful, you can't be so unreasonable, right? His tone was already very restrained. If it were someone else, Song Luan would have chased after them long ago to teach them a lesson. However, this man in black's strength was unfathomable. They didn't dare to use force and could only start to reason with him. That's strange. This dancing lotus is still growing in the lake. How did it become yours? Could it be that this first come, first serve rule is based on who sees this dancing lotus first? That man wasn't angry. Instead, he laughed as if he heard a joke. Song Luan's face flushed red, and he was a little embarrassed. He also knew that what he said just now wasn't reasonable. They came to this mirror lake first, but in reality, they didn't successfully take the dancing lotus away. They didn't even touch it. It was indeed unreasonable to say that this dancing lotus was his. Song Luan wanted to continue but was silently stopped by Jianghu. Jianghu stepped forward, cupped his hands, and asked very politely, I'm Jianghu. I'm Jianghu. May I know who you are? Almost everyone in the Tianling dynasty knew of Jianghu's name. His original identity as the eldest young master of the Jiang mansion was actually not worth mentioning. But because he was once the empress concubine's fiancé, he also rose with the tide and his fame increased by a lot. Jianghu introduced himself. On one hand, he hoped to know the other party's identity. On the other hand, it was a subtle deterrent. If the other party knew what was good for them, they should back off. The black-clothed man raised his eyelids slightly as a glimmer of light flashed through the depths of his eyes. You are not qualified to know who I am. He said these words very softly and indifferently, but they carried a majesty that no one dared to disobey. Jianghu was stunned. Then, he felt as if his face had been slapped twice. In the blink of an eye, the black origin power had already arrived in front of him. That force suddenly passed through the middle of Jianghu's chest. Blood and flesh splattered in an instant. The clothes in front of his chest were rapidly dyed red. Jianghu only felt a chill in his chest. After a short pause, intense pain engulfed him. The black-clothed man seemed a little regretful. Unfortunately, this is as far as you can go. He wanted to directly kill Jianghu, but his madam hadn't done anything yet, so he naturally had to keep him alive. Eldest young master. Seeing this situation, Song Luan and Xiahou Rong were shocked and hurriedly ran over. Eldest young master, are you okay? Everything happened too quickly just now. When that man attacked, they didn't even have time to react. By the time they realized what happened, Jianghu was already injured. Jianghu clutched his chest, and warm blood flowed out. He hurriedly took out an elixir and swallowed it. For some reason, there was a faint burning pain in his lower abdomen. But at this moment, his chest was pierced through, and there was a bloody hole dripping with blood. He couldn't care so much. You? He opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but when he saw the black-clothed man, he couldn't say anything. That pair of eyes, indifferent, cold, and noble. A deep fear rose from the bottom of his heart. Suddenly, a white light flashed across Jianghu's mind, and he looked at the other party with a horrified expression. You are the Baichao buildings. You are the Baichao buildings. Chapter 787. His strength was unfathomable, his identity was mysterious, and he kept mentioning, Madam. Wasn't this completely in line with the person behind 100 Herbs building that they had investigated previously? On the surface, 100 Herbs building was managed by Yu Ling, the manager, but anyone with a bit of insight could tell that 100 Herbs building had a true master. However, no one in Xiling City had ever seen this person. Even Jianghu was no exception. He had wanted to meet this mysterious person more than once, but he never had the chance. He didn't expect to meet him here. The man in black didn't seem to care about his words at all, and his fingers moved slightly. A breeze blew past, and the dancing lotus swayed gracefully. A layer of transparent barrier suddenly enveloped him. Xiahou Rong wanted to approach, but he was suffocated by the powerful aura that spread out from above. They looked at each other. Now, it was even more difficult to take the dancing lotus away. Song Luan asked worriedly and nervously, "Eldest young master, what should we do now?" Jiang Yuqing was seriously injured, and his situation didn't look good. The remaining few of them might not be that man in black's match. Even if they worked together, it would be very difficult to take back the dancing lotus. Jiang Yuqing gritted his teeth, and his lips and teeth were filled with the thick smell of blood. His chest and abdomen were surging, and his vision was turning black. His body hadn't completely recovered, and now that he was injured again, it was even more serious. For safety's sake, they should leave as soon as possible and not face this man directly. But that dancing lotus? He took a deep breath and said, "I'm fine. The dancing lotus is extremely important to Her Majesty. Please work together and take it back." Jiang Yuqing's words shocked the few of them. "Eldest young master, have you thought it through? The dancing lotus is important, but you can't ignore your body," Song Luan said anxiously. He glanced at the man in black from the corner of his eye, and his heart tightened. His arm was still numb and throbbing with pain. He was certain that he was definitely not the other party's match. This man was definitely the strongest he had seen in his life. If he continued to be so forceful, perhaps all of them would suffer in the end. Jiang Yuqing naturally didn't want to give up his life. But the dancing lotus was too important. He had to find a way to wake His Majesty up. If he missed this dancing lotus, who knew how long he would have to wait for the next opportunity? He shook his head. His Majesty's health is more important. Please. At this moment, the ice on the lake began to spread faster. The man in black lowered his eyes to take a look. His eyes moved slightly as he chuckled. "Looks like it's almost time." He didn't want these people to see what happened next. Thinking of this, he raised his head and looked at them. "If Her Majesty didn't wake up, just now, you said that person was from 100 Herbs Building?" Yu Qisong suddenly asked. After sending those people out, the man in black walked forward and finally stood in front of the dancing lotus. He looked down, and his originally cold and indifferent eyes seemed to have a layer of frost melted as slight ripples appeared. "I haven't been here for a while and you've been pestered by that thing?" His voice was low and seemed to have a trace of a lazy smile. As he spoke, he waved his sleeves lightly. The ice surface suddenly cracked. The dancing lotus swayed gently. On the stem, rays of light reflected. Looking carefully, it turned out to be a silk thread thinner than a hair wrapped around its stem. The man in black hooked his finger slightly. The thread broke apart, flew up, and landed in his palm, becoming a messy ball. Looking at it like this, it could be barely seen that this thing was slightly green. A cluster of golden flames suddenly ignited in his palm. That ball was instantly burned to ashes. He said lazily, "It's fine to bully my wife, but you actually dare to cheat. You're too shameless." The ice layer on the lake began to gradually shatter. Some of the floating ice also slowly melted. On the mirror lake, the waves were sparkling, and it was a quiet and peaceful scene. Suddenly, a roar broke the silence here.
What?
This sound almost shook the mountain forest and spread far and wide between heaven and earth. The man in black looked up. "Well, it seems that a certain person's recent training results are very gratifying. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network." Chapter 788. With a thought, his tall and slender figure instantly disappeared from where he stood. The sun shone brightly and shone down. The mirror lake, which gradually regained its calm, reflected the blue sky, which was very moving. The frost on the dancing lotus had unknowingly dissipated, and the translucent pink and white petals were sparkling as they moved with the wind. Not only did this roar reach the mirror lake, but the few people in the mystic forest also heard it clearly. The few people who were originally waiting all turned around with different expressions. Mu Hongyu couldn't help but ask, "What was that roar?" That roar just now, what kind of magical beast was it? It must be a high-level fiend to be able to cause such a commotion, right? Lei Laosi chuckled and looked over with an excited expression. High-level fiend? I'm afraid it's more than that. Yi Ranran exclaimed and realized that he had lost his composure, so he hurriedly covered his mouth. Could it be another legendary fiend? Lei Laosi looked at Qin Yi. Big brother, what do you think? Qin Yi narrowed his eyes and replied after a while. It's indeed a legendary fiend. However, it sounds like it came from the Red Moon Desert. The mystic forest was basically under his control. If any legendary fiend appeared here, he would definitely notice it immediately. This roar came so suddenly, so it must have come from the Red Moon Desert. However, what surprised him was that even if it was a legendary fiend, it was still shocking that its roar could travel so far from the Red Moon Desert. This legendary fiend's abilities shouldn't be underestimated. Red Moon Desert? That far? The few of them were shocked. Mu Hongyu tilted her head, and a trace of curiosity appeared on her face. Speaking of which, there are quite a lot of rumors about the Mystic Forest and Mirror Lake in Dahuang Swamp, but only the Red Moon Desert seems to be very mysterious. When we came, we only took a quick look. It was an endless golden desert with rolling heat waves. Magnificent, majestic, and majestic. Before she came, she even did some research on Dahuang Swamp and realized that the description of the Red Moon Desert was the least. After looking at it for a long time, she still couldn't figure it out. Qin Yi restrained his expression and said seriously, "You can't go there. None of you are allowed to casually approach the Red Moon Desert. If you hear anything, pretend that you didn't hear anything. Do you understand?" Mu Hongyu originally said it casually, but she didn't expect Qin Yi to instruct or warn her so seriously. She quickly straightened her back. Got it. Red Moon Desert. It was the time of the day when the sun was at its brightest. The golden desert was boundless. The ground was boiling hot, and heat waves were rolling. This place was like a huge steamer, stuffy and hot. There seemed to be flames burning under the ground. On the undulating sand dunes, a white figure was standing. It was Xue. In fact, it had already turned into an earthy yellow color, and its entire body was dirty. Compared to before, it had lost a lot of weight. However, the aura on its body was much stronger than before. It didn't stop to rest as it continued to run through the vast desert. Finally, it reached the standard and was able to rest for a while. Xue could not help but let out a long howl. She looked at the sand dunes in the desert with tears in her eyes. It's alive. A tall and straight black figure gradually appeared in front of it. Xue's tears hung at the corners of its eyes, but they could not fall. It was very awkward. As I placed all my attention on training, I didn't notice that my master actually came. A baby-like voice slowly sounded. You still dare to come? That man took off his mask and revealed a noble and devilish face. It was Rong Xiu. Digression, 6:0 clock mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 789. Rong Xiu chuckled, as if he did not hear the dissatisfaction and murderous intent in his words. He nodded slightly. Greetings to the three seniors. It has been a long time since we last met. You seem to be more energetic than before. Whoosh! A cloud of yellow sand suddenly swept up from the ground. It transformed into a long sword and pierced towards Rong Xiu. The scorching hot air was instantly torn apart by a black hole. A biting cold attacked. It went straight for Rong Xiu's glabella. Rong Xiu looked up slightly with a calm expression. His deep phoenix eyes were as pure and unfathomable as the starry night. His cold and undisciplined eyes finally flashed with a trace of seriousness. He held a long silver sword in his hand. Immediately, the sword rose. The sword fell. This sword movement was extremely simple. There were no fancy moves. It only gathered a terrifying force and fell straight down. The sword light flew out. It broke through the air. Two streaks of sword energy met the attack head-on. The hot golden sand was like a hurricane that swept past, and the yellow sand flew everywhere. Two deep grooves appeared on the sand. Clang! A crisp sound of collision was heard. The two streaks of sword energy transformed into countless streaks of light. A violent aura erupted from the middle and swept wildly in all directions. Seeing this, Xue Xue immediately buried its head in its paws. It had been here for so many days. It did not learn anything else, but it had trained its instinct to avoid the wind and sand. Although it was already covered in dust, its master was here after all. If it could save it, it would do its best to save it. Xue Xue's fur danced wildly in the wind. Fortunately, its body had become much stronger recently, and it was still very stable in the wind. After a while, the waves gradually calmed down. Xue Xue crawled out from a pile of sand. Its body shook violently as it looked at its master. Rong Xiu was still standing in the same spot. His feet sank half an inch into the sand. He tidied his clothes. Actually, he was still as clean as new. Not a single grain of sand was on him. It could be seen that he had dealt with this move with ease. Rong Xiu cupped his fists and smiled faintly. "Thank you for your guidance, senior." After a while, the baby-like voice sounded again. "I haven't seen you for a few years, and you've already cultivated to such a level. No wonder you're so arrogant. Senior, you're mistaken. In front of you, I don't dare to offend you at all. How is this arrogant?" Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly, but his tone was very sincere. Dugu Mabao snorted. Lan Xiao couldn't help but interject. "Actually, it doesn't matter if you're insolent or not, but your face hasn't changed much. It's still as annoying as before." His voice sounded sour. Diwu Zhangzi couldn't help but say, "Lan Xiao, can you have even one chance to see someone for the first time? Isn't that about their face?" Diwu Zhangzi thought to himself that he really had a problem. He actually hoped that Lan Xiao could correct this problem. "Senior, you flatter me." Lan Xiao was speechless. He was a little sad. "Damn it, there's actually a man who's more shameless and narcissistic than me in this world." He boasted that he had reached the peak in this aspect, but every time he met Rong Xiu, he was always one step behind. He would always return empty-handed and be angered half to death. Dugamabao couldn't help but say coldly, "Damn pervert, can't you stop for a while at your age? Is this the main point?" "The main point is the girl." Lan Xiao was furious. "Who are you calling old?" "That's right, Big Bao, you still have to grow for a few hundred years before you can reach my waist." Lan Xiao's voice stopped abruptly after a short and sharp cry. Rong Xiu looked at the void in front of him and said, "It's been a few years. Seniors, you're not even willing to come out and meet me?" Dugamabao snorted coldly. "If the girl is here, we'll naturally come out to meet you. But you're the only one here now. Why do we have to go out?" Rong Xiu's expression changed slightly. He rubbed his brows helplessly and found it funny. "It's still the same as before. Rong Xiu, you're a smart person. You should know why we're looking for you this time." Dugamabao's voice sounded much more serious with a hint of coldness. "What's the matter with you?" The moment he said that, the surrounding space seemed to have frozen. Xue Xue froze and didn't dare to move. The surroundings were clearly hot, but at this moment, it felt bone-piercing cold. It was as if a wave of coldness was spreading from all directions. It looked at its master worriedly. Rong Xiu's expression became much calmer. He didn't speak for a long time. Until Dugu Mabao and the rest thought that Rong Xiu wasn't going to say anything, he finally spoke. "Originally, you and I had promised to visit you again, but a lot of things happened in the past few years, so we haven't been able to come. Please forgive us, seniors." Rong Xiu's tone was very calm, as if he was talking about something unrelated. But if one listened carefully, they would realize that under the seemingly calm sea, there were endless waves surging, as if this peace would be broken at any time. After a moment of silence, Lan Xiao couldn't help but ask, "And then? What the hell is going on?" This Rong Xiu was really too much. How could he only say half of what he wanted to say? Rong Xiu paused. "Please forgive me for not being able to tell you what exactly happened now. When you see her in the future, it'll be more appropriate for you to ask her." "Why you're not going to say it clearly?" Lan Xiao was a little surprised. Diwu Zhangzi couldn't help but say, There's no difference whether you or you say it. Can't you just say it now? The two of them were very close. Wasn't it the same no matter who said it? Rong Xiu shook his head. Although he was tactful, he was very determined. It's indeed better for her to say some things. There were too many things involved. It might not be a good thing to let them all know now. Besides, there were a lot of things that even she didn't know about. Seeing how determined Rong Xiu was, the few of them knew that they wouldn't be able to get anything out of him. Lan Xiao snorted. If you don't want to say it, then don't say it. Anyway, we'll be able to see her soon. When the time came, he would definitely ask everything clearly. Big Bao, don't help him tame his beasts anymore. Let little Snow go back with him. We'll wait here for her to come out. Xue Xue, who had been forgotten, was filled with tears again. Can I finally escape from this sea of suffering? Rong Xiu said seriously. Thank you seniors for taking care of Xue Xue. However, I'll continue to stay here for a period of time. So, it'll be good for Xue Xue to accompany you here. Is that okay? Xue Xue looked at its master in disbelief as if it couldn't believe that he actually dared to sell it in front of them. Dugamabao said, it's fine if it stays. It's also fine if you don't want to say it. However, I have one last question. Were you the one who changed Er's body? Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Chapter 790. Chu Luiyue, who was trapped underground, was completely unaware of the changes in the outside world. She didn't even notice Rong Xiu's arrival. In the dark space, Chu Luiyue and the two Tian baby had already exchanged a few blows and were now in a stalemate. The thick and heavy space was the two Tian babies' divine domain, and it could basically control everything in here. As for Chu Luiyue, every move she made here was extremely laborious. When she used the same move, the origin power she consumed here was at least 2 or 3 times more than what she normally consumed outside. If it was someone else, they might not be able to hold on. But Chu Luiyue was different. She had too much origin power stored in her body, and now that she had broken through to the middle of the 5th rank, her control over origin power was much stronger than before. Naturally, she could use it more freely. She held the long yuan sword tightly with both hands, looked at the two Tian baby opposite her, and muttered in a low voice. It seems that something happened outside. In this duel, she was actually at a disadvantage. But just now, for some unknown reason, the two Tian baby had undergone a slight change. The thin layer of frost that surrounded it had actually gradually disappeared. Following that, its strength had clearly weakened. Chu Luiyue had been with it for so long, and was very familiar with everything about it. Naturally, she was also very sensitive to its changes. The two Tian babies surrounding crystals had almost been completely devoured by her, so its remaining strength was actually not enough for it. It intermittently seized some energy from outside to fill its body, and used it to strengthen its own strength. It was also because of this that Chu Luiyue had been unable to completely take it down. It had an endless supply of energy supporting it, and it was extremely difficult to deal with it. Now that the layer of frost had dissipated, it didn't show any more signs of such a situation. This made Chu Luiyue suspect that something had happened outside. But no matter what, this was good for her. She raised her sword again and pointed it at the two Tian baby. Now, are you still not willing to obediently admit defeat? A vigorous aura suddenly erupted from the two Tian baby. Chu Luiyue sent out her sword. Long Yuan sword. The sharp and cold sword light flickered, and on the sword blade, 2 types of flames intersected. It emitted a terrifying pressure. This place had been completely sealed, so Chu Luiyue wasn't worried that someone would suddenly break in. Thus, she used her trump card the moment she attacked. The sound of the sword. The flames burned fiercely. Like 2 huge illusions, they surrounded the two Tian baby. The space around the Tian baby began collapsing again. Following that, the surrounding flames were also swallowed. Annihilation in the space is space. But the flames the Tian baby, the two Tian baby. As these 2 flames, one was formed by the water droplet's force, while the other was taken from the heavenly square cauldron. If someone was here at this moment and saw that the 2 Tian baby was being forced into such a state by a stage 5 warrior like Chu Luiyue, their jaws would definitely drop. Seeing that the situation wasn't good, the 2 Tian baby moved and suddenly dodged upwards. However, the 2 flames followed closely behind and soon surrounded the heaven-wrecking holy seed. The long Yuan sword chi finally arrived. Then it fiercely fell. Bang! The 2 balls of energy collided. Rumble! Crazy aftershocks swept out in all directions. Violent sounds rang out continuously. A crack suddenly appeared on the ground. Chu Liyue's pupils shrank. Then she saw that the faint layer of light outside also began to sway. The space of the divine realm began to compress toward Chu Liyue. Chu Liyue's body began to ache as if there was a heavy object pressing down on her, and the force in her force slowed down again. Chu Liyue's gaze was fixed on the 2 Tian baby in front of her, but she realized that the 2 balls of flame seemed to be greatly affected, and the flames became much smaller. She was shocked. Could this be the 2 Tian baby's true power? Just as this thought flashed through her mind, the 2 Tian baby suddenly glowed. Taizu suddenly shouted in a deep voice, "Lu Yu, retreat!" Upon hearing this, Chu Liyue immediately went on her toes and rapidly moved backward without thinking. At the same time, she raised the black shield in front of her. Boom! Boom! The continuous and ferocious attacks caused Chu Liyue's hand, which was holding onto the black shield, to crack. Although the black shield blocked most of the impact, a small part of the force was transmitted to Chu Liyue's body through the black shield. In an instant, the blood in her chest and abdomen surged, and her lips turned pale. The heaven-wrecking holy seed was indeed much stronger than he had expected. Chu Liyue pursed her lips and quickly glanced at the 2 Tian baby, only to see that the light on it was even brighter. This power was clearly stored in its own body. In the next moment, the 2 Tian baby flew toward Chu Liyue. It was as if there was a layer of invisible barrier around it, blocking all the sword energy and flames outside. Wherever it passed, it left behind a black spatial crack. Chu Liyue felt a chill run down her spine, and her mind was constantly thinking of ways to deal with it. Soon, the heaven-wrecking holy seed arrived not far from her. For some reason, Chu Liyue felt a trace of ridicule and anger. In the next moment, a cold wind suddenly attacked her from behind. Chu Liyue was startled. She looked back. The same heaven-wrecking holy seed had appeared behind her at some point in time. It was flying straight toward Chu Liyue's dantian. It seemed that it was going to take the power in her body. A crack suddenly appeared on the pure gold armor. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 791. This 2 Tian baby is a twin. The Taizu was shocked and angry at the same time. Chu Liyue's heart skipped a beat. Twin. Didn't that mean that there were indeed 2 Tian babies here? She immediately turned her head to take a look and found that the 2 Tian baby that she had been fighting with earlier was still floating in the air. This was not an illusion. There were indeed 2 Tian babies, one in front of the other behind. Chu Liyue was stunned. Even though she had made all the preparations to deal with this 2 Tian baby, she did not expect that there were actually 2 twins. Dealing with one was already difficult enough, let alone 2? While Chu Liyue was in a daze, the 2 identical 2 Tian babies flew towards her. Chu Liyue felt as if her internal organs were being squeezed together by something, as if they would explode from her chest in the next moment. She gritted her teeth as countless thoughts flashed through her mind. She had to dodge. Once she was hit by this 2 Tian baby, the consequences would be unimaginable. However, the black shield could only block one of them. What about the other one? The pure gold armor had already cracked. She was no match for it at all. Screech. A clear chime could be heard all of a sudden. Chu Liyue only saw a red shadow flash before her eyes. Dumpling was already in front of her. Dumpling! Chu Liyue exclaimed. Even the pure gold armor could not block the power of the 2 Tian baby, let alone Dumpling's body of flesh and blood. Even a divine beast would not be able to block it. Dumpling flapped its wings. The crimson flames swept out in a frenzy, quickly condensing into a huge barrier in front of it. The two Tian baby quickly flew over. Clang. Almost effortlessly, it pierced through that layer of barrier. Bang. The sound of the barrier shattering could be heard. Chu Luiwei was blocked behind Dumpling. Her line of sight was completely blocked and she could not see anything. However, she had heard that sound clearly. Tuan. Chu Luiwei's heart skipped a beat at this moment. She hurriedly called for Dumpling. As long as Dumpling returned to her body, she could avoid this attack. However, Dumpling did not move. It was still firmly and stubbornly standing in front of her. Although they were in a contractual relationship, it was reasonable to say that all of Dumpling's actions had to be approved by Chu Luiwei. If Chu Luiwei summoned it, it would not be able to resist. However, because Tuanzi was now a divine beast, it had a certain degree of autonomy to a large extent. It was also because of this that it could continue blocking in front of Chu Luiwei. Of course, it was also because all of this happened too quickly that no one could react in time. The sound of something piercing through flesh could be heard. It was dull and short. Chu Luiwei's heart sank. She immediately looked up and saw that on Dumpling's left wing, there was a bloody hole the size of a fist. The two Tian baby was actually very small. It was only the size of an adult's knuckle. It had two sharp ends and a slight bulge in the middle, like a small shuttle. It was reasonable to say that the wound left by this thing would not be very big. However, in reality, because of the overbearing aura around it, when it pierced through something, the hole would often expand due to the terrifying power. At this moment, Dumpling was in such a state. In an instant, flesh and blood splattered everywhere. A few drops of warm blood splashed onto Chu Luiwei's face. Before she could react, she saw the two Tian baby flying towards her. Chu Luiwei's eyes turned scarlet. "Were you the one who switched her body?" Hearing this, Rong Xiu's eyebrows twitched slightly. The surroundings were incomparably quiet. They could even hear the sound of sand flowing slowly. The sun was blazing hot, but there was no wind at all. The surrounding air seemed to have become sticky and hot, as if it was difficult to breathe. Actually, Rong Xiu had only paused for a short while, but to these people, it felt like an incomparably long period of time had passed. Rong Xiu's thin lips parted slightly. Just as he was about to say something, his expression suddenly changed. He suddenly turned around and looked in the direction of the mystic forest. Her pure gold sacred armor was broken? He quickly said, "Seniors, something has happened in the mystic forest. I have to rush over immediately. Excuse me." After saying that, he lifted his feet and was about to rush forward. Wait. A cloud of yellow sand suddenly flew up and formed a fence in front of him, blocking his path. "What happened over there? Tell me clearly." This was the voice of the Dugamabao. The three of them could only come out on the night of the crimson moon every month. The rest of the time, they could only stay in this desert. However, they could more or less sense everything that happened in the entire Dahuang swamp. Everything was fine now. Why did Rong Xiu suddenly want to leave? Rong Xiu put on the silver mask and said concisely, "Her pure gold sacred armor is broken." What? Dugamabao was stunned for a moment and immediately denied it. "That's impossible. Although that thing is quite powerful, it's impossible to break the pure gold sacred armor." They had specially studied that thing in the past. After confirming that it hadn't matured yet, they were relieved to let the girl deal with it alone. Rong Xiu's voice seemed to be covered in a layer of frost. "I specially left a mark on the pure gold sacred armor. It's definitely not wrong." Hearing how certain Rong Xiu's tone was, the few of them also felt a little uneasy. Du Zhangzi hurriedly said, "Then go quickly. You must protect her." Rong Xiu nodded lightly and instantly disappeared. "Little snowflake, why aren't you following?" Lan Shao added. Xue Xue was originally worried about Chu Luiwei. Hearing this, it was as if it had been granted amnesty. It raised its claws and instantly transformed into a bolt of lightning and rushed out. After the man and beast left, Lan Shao couldn't help but say, "Seriously, if it weren't for the fact that we can't leave this godforsaken place, how could we not even be able to do such a small thing? This is great." We gave that kid another chance to be a hero and save the beauty. The most important thing is that the girl is fine. Who cares who saved her? Diwu Zhangzi snorted and had a rare temper. I'm just saying. But Big Bao, weren't you sure that that thing was fine? What's going on now? Lan Xiao asked unhappily. Dugama Bao fell silent and didn't speak for a long time. Lan Xiao snorted coldly. If it's really because there's something wrong with that thing that made the girl hurt, without him and Diwu Zhangzi having to do anything, Big Bao would suffer to death. Let's see how you explain it to the girl later. After a long while, Dugama Bao said slowly and firmly, she'll be fine. Dong. The crisp and melodious sound of the collision echoed in the dark and cramped space. Chu Luiwei stared in shock at the transparent square cauldron that suddenly appeared. It took her a while to react. Just now, she was about to risk her life. In the end, her vision blurred, and this heavenly square cauldron appeared on its own and blocked her. Most importantly, he had really blocked the heaven-wrecking holy seed. That sound was produced by the collision between the two. The two Tian baby actually bounced back after being hit by the counterattack. Chu Luiwei was dumbfounded. Lu Yu, your treasure is actually so powerful? Taizu's voice couldn't hide his excitement. Chu Luiwei heaved a sigh of relief in her heart. I didn't think. Her voice stopped abruptly. A sparkling and translucent white bone slowly floated out of the heavenly square cauldron. This collision had actually caused the great phoenix dragon skeleton to be knocked out. Digression. After supper, everyone went to sleep. Tomorrow, at midnight, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 792. Previously, Chu Luiwei had carefully kept this skeleton in the heavenly square cauldron because she was worried that the great phoenix dragon race would discover its aura and chase after it. She didn't expect that the two Tian babies' collision would directly shake the skeleton out. Chu Luiwei's heart suddenly trembled, and she immediately put the skeleton back. Bang! The skeleton had just floated out of the cauldron when it was suppressed by Chu Luiwei. There was a collision echo from inside. Chu Luiwei was still in shock, and her eyes were fixed on the heavenly square cauldron. This time, the skeleton didn't come out again. But thinking of what had just happened, Chu Luiwei still felt a little uneasy. In that instant, that piece of bone was completely exposed. Would the great phoenix dragon race sense it? Yes. The legendary three-eyed eagle's indifferent voice sounded in her heart. Chu Luiwei was shocked. Really? The great phoenix dragon bloodline is one of the two strongest races in the world. They are extremely sensitive to their own race. Even if they are thousands of miles away, they can still sense evil intentions without any hindrance. The legendary three-eyed eagle's tone was much more serious. Previously, with the long yuan sword and the heavenly square cauldron suppressing it, this thing's aura didn't spread. But just now, Chu Luiwei's heart slowly sank. Originally, she still had a trace of hope, but the current situation was probably dangerous. Then what can we do? Chu Luiwei asked with a headache. She knew that she was no match for existences like the great phoenix dragon. The legendary three-eyed eagle fell silent. Taizu suddenly said, Actually, it's not that there's no way. If the great phoenix dragon race comes, they will definitely ask for this skeleton back. Lu Yu, why don't you use this skeleton on the legendary three-eyed eagle as soon as possible? This way, they won't be able to compete with you. Chu Luiwei was stunned. Did Taizu mean that she should help the legendary three-eyed eagle reconstruct its body now? This is indeed a solution, but Taizu still lacks the herbs needed to reconstruct its body. Taizu coughed. I remember that you already have the purple gold Bodhi leaf, right? This was enough. There should be some among the remaining long yuan swords. What? For a moment, Chu Luiwei thought that he was hallucinating. What do you think is inside the long yuan sword? Taizu paused for a moment, his voice drifting. It's those herbs that can help divine beasts reconstruct their bodies. I remember that there are still some left. However, it's mainly because you already have the purple gold Bodhi leaf. That's the most important thing. The hilt of the long yuan sword was a huge space. There were many treasures and riches that the Taizu had brought out from the Tianling god realm. Because there were too many of them, even Chu Luiwei didn't fully understand what was inside. Now that she heard from Taizu, she realized that there were even such things. Blood Cloud Divine Crystal? Ink Essence Bamboo? Heavenly Spirit True Fruit? I think so too. The corners of Chu Luiwei's eyes twitched violently. Taizu felt guilty and hurriedly explained. Actually, this matter is complicated. I intentionally found these things back then. Although I used some of them, there's still a lot left. Anyway, it's definitely enough for you to use. I didn't think of this matter at first. After all, there are too many things. Ahem, I didn't tell you at first because I wanted to give you more opportunities to train. Taizu meant what he said. At first, he really didn't think of the existence of these things. It was only when he saw Chu Luiwei retrieve the purple gold Bodhi leaf that he finally remembered. But at that time, Chu Luiwei and the legendary three-eyed eagle weren't very anxious about this matter, so he didn't mention it. He wanted to let her find it first and gain more experience. In the end, if she really didn't find anything, he would take it out. He didn't expect to encounter today's situation. Lu Yu, are you angry with me? Taizu asked nervously. Chu Luiwei didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Taizu, why would I be angry with you? I can't thank you enough for helping me like this. It was just that this matter came too suddenly. She didn't expect it for a moment, so she was so shocked. Speaking of which, these things were Taizu's after all, and he had no obligation to give them to her. Now that her urgent need could be solved, she was indeed full of joy. However, judging from Taizu's words, he used to have a lot of these things. Even if he needed them for himself, he didn't need to leave so many behind. A trace of doubt flashed through Chu Luiwei's mind. But the situation was urgent at this time, so she couldn't ask in detail. She could only suppress the confusion in her heart. Bang! Another crashing sound was heard. Chu Luiwei immediately looked back. This time, it was the other one that struck the black shield. What made Chu Luiwei feel lucky was that this collision didn't leave any marks on the black shield. It was much better than the broken pure gold armor. Chu Luiwei's eyes narrowed slightly. This black shield was indeed of a higher level than the pure gold armor, and its defense was stronger. Her heart calmed down a little, and she looked at the other one. She could completely leave her back to the black shield. Now, she just needed to deal with this one. Her gaze fell on the heavenly square cauldron. With a thought, the transparent square cauldron slowly rotated and flew forward. The two Tian babies seemed to feel a threat and began to retreat. Chu Luiwei was delighted. The heavenly square cauldron seemed to be able to deal with this thing. The two Tian babies suddenly rushed forward. Chu Luiwei looked up. Then she saw the other two Tian baby flying over. The two heaven-wrecking holy seeds were about to collide. Lu Yu stopped them. Once the two twins merge, it will be even more difficult to deal with. Taizu shouted in a deep voice. Chu Luiwei directly swung the long yuan sword. A biting cold sword light flashed. It flew between the two Tian babies. At the same time, the heavenly square cauldron slowly flew toward one of them. A transparent tongue of flame shot out from it. In just an instant, one of the two Tian babies was swept away by the transparent flame and then disappeared into the heavenly square cauldron. From the beginning to the end, everything was smooth and natural, without the slightest pause. It was as if the two Tian baby was just an ordinary toy. Even Chu Luiwei was secretly shocked. She thought that the heavenly square cauldron should be able to deal with the two Tian baby, but she didn't expect it to be so easy. In the next second, the second heavenly square cauldron was swallowed by the second flame. From beginning to end, only a few breaths of time had passed. The heavenly square cauldron quickly shrank and fell back into Chu Luiwei's hands. Chu Luiwei carefully looked at the small transparent square cauldron in her palm. Looking at it, she could vaguely see the skeleton of the great phoenix dragon and the two Tian babies inside. However, the two babies were separated, each occupying one side. Chu Luiwei blinked and couldn't believe that the two Tian baby was subdued so easily. Taizu suddenly asked, "What's the origin of the two Tian baby? What is the origin of this square cauldron of yours?" A better reading experience came from the Love Network. Chapter 793. Chu Luiwei shook her head. I got it when I met the legendary three-eyed eagle, but I don't know what it is. She had asked the legendary three-eyed eagle before, but it didn't seem to be willing to say much. It only said that it was a sacred object. It was such a vague answer that it was as good as not saying anything. Chu Luiwei knew that she wouldn't be able to get anything out of it for the time being, so she put this matter aside for the time being. As time passed, she also realized that this thing seemed to be more mysterious than she had guessed. Whether it was the great phoenix dragon skeleton or the two Tian babies, it could easily swallow them and completely suppress their power. It was terrifying. Taizu couldn't help but say, "It's not an exaggeration to say that your luck is heaven-defying." First, it was the black pyramid, then the water droplet, and finally this transparent square cauldron. Even the black shield was somewhat unfathomable. Even the dragon abyss sword paled in comparison to these treasures. Any one of these things would probably cause countless people to go crazy over it. And Chu Luiwei actually had so many. There was no lack of geniuses in this world, but there were very few who could grow from geniuses to true experts. To become one of these people, talent and hard work were indispensable, but there was also one thing that was extremely important: luck. And Chu Luiwei had all of them. Others might not be able to encounter such a great opportunity even once in their lifetime, but she kept encountering it one after another. If someone like her couldn't become a top expert, it would be too unreasonable. Chu Luiwei's lips curled up. Actually, I didn't expect this thing to be so powerful. However, this matter was finally resolved. The stone hanging in her heart finally fell to the ground. She let out a long breath and looked around. The space was cracking bit by bit. Cracks began to appear on the layer of faint green light. She had already put away the two Tian baby, so the divine territory it displayed naturally dissipated along with it. Soon, it turned into streams of light and disappeared, dimming bit by bit. The pressure on Chu Luiwei's body also gradually lessened. She looked at the heavenly square cauldron again with a solemn expression. She couldn't go out yet. The matter of the great phoenix dragon skeleton had not been resolved yet. Since he had everything, he might as well help the legendary three-eyed eagle reconstruct its body. With this thought in mind, Chu Luiwei said, "Taizu, may I trouble you to help me set up the barrier first?" The great ancestor knew what she was planning to do and immediately attacked without saying a word. A translucent barrier quickly appeared. Silver lightning could be vaguely seen swimming on it. Taizu had used a lot of Tianlei in the past, so he had fused a part of Tianlei's power into his own power. After isolating this space, Chu Luiwei felt slightly more at ease. She threw the heavenly square cauldron out, and it quickly returned to its normal size and landed on the ground silently. Dumpling. She summoned Dumpling back first. Tuanzi turned into a small one and went back to her shoulder, leaning on her shoulder with grievance and pitifulness. One of its wings drooped and was dripping with blood. The wound was a shocking sight. When Dumpling was still in the form of a blood ferret, it had always been very sturdy. Although it had been injured before, it rarely looked like this. Now that it had just become a divine beast, it had suffered such a serious injury. Chu Luiwei's heart ached when she saw it. She carefully cleaned its wound, took out medicine, and bandaged it. Then she pretended to be angry. "Have you learned your lesson? Let's see if you dare to be so disobedient next time." Tuanzi whimpered and looked at her pitifully with a pair of magnificent eyes. It was so dangerous at that time. How could it avoid it? Even if there was only a 1 in 10,000 chance that she would be injured, it would still block in front of her without hesitation. After waiting for so long, they finally met again. How could it bear to let her bear the danger? Back then, she had directly sent it out in order to save its life. In the end, seeing Dumpling's sad and pitiful eyes, Chu Luiwei's heart softened. Okay, I won't scold you anymore. Go back and recuperate first, okay?" Dumpling nodded. Its figure flashed and returned to Chu Luiwei's body to recuperate. In fact, divine beasts had strong self-healing abilities. This kind of injury could be healed in a short time. Chu Luiwei took a deep breath and looked at the heavenly square cauldron. A huge black phantom suddenly appeared in front of her. Whoosh, its wings flapped. Its momentum was astonishing. It was the legendary three-eyed eagle. Compared to before, its phantom seemed to be more solid. Chu Luiyue looked at its eyes steadily. Are you ready? The legendary three-eyed eagle's usually indifferent eyes finally revealed a glimmer of excitement. Even if it was cold and indifferent, it couldn't help but feel emotional at this time. It had been suppressed for thousands of years and was tortured in pain every day and night in the heavenly square cauldron. It almost couldn't take it anymore. It had imagined the scene of reconstructing its physical body countless times, but even it didn't have much hope and just treated it as a fantasy. Those who could do this in the world were all top-notch figures. How could Chu Luiyue do it alone? However, it didn't expect this day to really come and so soon. Chu Luiyue asked, I'm ready. I'm ready. How about you? The legendary three-eyed eagle nodded lightly. Chu Luiyue pursed his lips slightly. Then I'll start. When the two-Tian baby was kept in the heavenly square cauldron by Chu Luiyue and the realm of the gods completely collapsed, the mystic forest outside was peaceful. In the quiet forest, a light breeze blew. Qin Yi was originally sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed to rest, but when he heard this movement he suddenly opened his eyes. In his long and narrow eyes, a glimmer of light flashed quickly. There seemed to be some movement just now. He had set up an inescapable net in this forest, so he could sense any changes in the mystic forest. However, after sensing for a while, he didn't discover anything. It seemed like it was just an illusion just now. Qin Yi knitted his brows and stood up. The few people at the side looked over. Lei Laosi asked, Big brother, what's the matter? Qin Yi shook his head. Nothing. I'll go ahead and take a look. As he spoke, he walked towards the mother tree. The surroundings were quiet, and there didn't seem to be any changes around the mother tree. However, Qin Yi knitted his brows even tighter. I shouldn't be hallucinating.
What?
A roar suddenly came from above. Everyone raised their heads in unison and saw a muscular figure flying over at high speed. Lei Laosi exclaimed. It's the legendary fiend that roared just now. Qin Yi squinted his eyes. Could it be that it caused that movement? In the dim space, a black figure flitted past quickly. Very quickly, Rong Xiu saw that familiar figure below. However, it seems like she's fine. Chu Luiyue seemed to have sensed something and suddenly looked up. The two of them met each other's eyes and looked into each other's eyes. Chu Luiyue's heart suddenly skipped a beat. Digression. Update at 6 p.m. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from AI Network. Chapter 794. This pair of eyes actually gave her a very familiar feeling, as if she had seen them somewhere before. At first glance, they were as deep as the night sky, with some kind of fatal attraction. Chu Luiyue opened her mouth, and a name seemed to be about to slip out of her mouth. You, however, at this moment, the man calmly turned his gaze away. There seemed to be a faint layer of mist in the depths of his eyes, covering those soul-stirring eyes. Chu Luiyue suddenly came back to her senses and carefully sized up the person who had come. This was a mysterious man wearing a black brocade robe and a silver-white mask on his face. He was suspended in mid-air, looking down at her. Because he was completely black and had no extra accessories, he almost merged with the dark space behind him. She could barely make out that his figure was very tall. As for the rest, she couldn't see anything. Chu Luiyue stared at him for a while and suddenly blurted out, First Master? After a short silence, the man finally spoke, his voice low and lazy. You have good eyesight. It was indeed him. Chu Luiyue was actually shocked. She had never seen this person with her own eyes, but she had heard his voice last time in Yao Chen's imperial mausoleum. Now that she saw him, she didn't know why, but she felt that this person gave her a similar feeling to the First Master that day. She had just asked tentatively, but she didn't expect to guess correctly. Chu Luiyue blinked and carefully sized him up again. Unfortunately, the surroundings were dark, and she couldn't see anything clearly. He was also wearing a mask, so she couldn't see anything at all. However, she quickly restrained herself. In the face of such a person, this kind of gaze was inevitably a little offensive. After all, this was the first time they had officially met. Chu Luiwei retracted her gaze and glanced at the legendary three-eyed eagle and the heavenly square cauldron in front of her. Before this person came, she had just prepared to help the legendary three-eyed eagle reconstruct its physical body. She hadn't done much, but he had appeared. Through this translucent barrier set up by Taizu, he should be able to roughly see the situation around her. If it had been someone else, Chu Luiwei would have immediately put all these things away. Anyone with a bit of eyesight would be able to tell that the legendary three-eyed eagle beside her was not an ordinary magical beast. However, this person had a mysterious background and a powerful background. Chu Luiwei believed that he would definitely recognize the legendary three-eyed eagle. As for the heavenly square cauldron, although there was nothing special about it at first glance, there was no guarantee that he would know about it. Chu Luiwei was well aware of the principle of treasuring a jade ring becomes a crime. However, the strange thing was that after recognizing that it was the first master, she actually heaved a sigh of relief in her heart. She didn't know why, but she was certain that he wouldn't steal her things. This feeling came out of nowhere, but that was what Chu Luiwei thought. Chu Luiwei didn't try to hide it even though this person could easily snatch her things away. Since he had already seen it, there was no point in hiding it anymore. If he really wanted something from her, why did he leave the black pyramid to her? Thinking of this, Chu Luiwei's heart moved. She bowed to the other party seriously. I have to thank the first master for the previous matter. The other party had helped her many times in the open and in the dark, so it was only right for her to thank him. However, the other party didn't respond to her words. Instead, he asked, "Are you planning to help the legendary three-eyed eagle reconstruct its physical body?" Chu Luiwei's eyelids twitched. He really saw through it at a glance. She was secretly glad that she didn't think of deceiving the other party. She nodded and admitted frankly, yes. A fifth-rank warrior trying to help a mythological beast reconstruct its physical body. If this were to spread out, it would attract ridicule and disapproval from many people. However, the first master just nodded gently and didn't comment on it at all. Instead, he changed the topic and asked seemingly unintentionally, "This place should have been quite lively just now." The man's tone was lazy with a bit of carelessness. Chu Luiwei didn't care. The fight between her and the two Tian baby was indeed quite loud and left a lot of traces in the surroundings. She paused for a moment and asked tentatively, "First Master, I have something to ask you. Do you know what was in the pyramid that was obtained in the Imperial Mausoleum?" After Chu Luiwei asked, she nervously held her breath. This man must know something. Otherwise, he wouldn't have left a seal on it for no reason. But what was it? Chu Luiwei thought for a long time but still couldn't figure it out. Now that she happened to see him, she naturally had to ask him. As the voice fell, the surroundings fell into silence. Chu Luiwei's heart seemed to be gradually clenched by something. Suddenly, the man swept down from above. Chu Luiwei didn't see his movements clearly and saw that he had already appeared not far in front of her. The space at the bottom wasn't small. The enchantment that Taizu helped Chu Luiwei only occupied about half of the space here. Reconstructing the physical body was originally a meticulous and long-term work. In order to successfully complete it, one must try to avoid external interference as much as possible. However, there weren't many requirements for the size of the space. The man jumped down and landed on the other half of the empty ground. He stood in the dark, and Chu Luiwei could only see his deep and quiet eyes. He seemed to chuckle softly. "If I tell you now, then why did I leave the seal?" "Chu Luiwei, it seems that the first master is unwilling to say?" Actually, this was also expected. It would be strange if it was really so easy to find out. Just as he said, then there was no point in leaving the seal. If it's not convenient for the first master to tell me, it's fine. But this thing seems to be very important to you, so why did you leave it here? This was also a question that Chu Luiwei couldn't figure out. With his strength, wouldn't it be a piece of cake for him to deal with this thing? "I have my own reasons," the man said lightly, obviously not intending to explain. Chu Luiwei frowned slightly. This feeling of not knowing anything was really uncomfortable. Her tone also became cold. Since it's not convenient for the first master to say anything, then I won't ask anymore. If he didn't say anything, then so be it. Perhaps one day, she would be able to unlock that layer of the seal and secretly find out what was inside. If there's nothing else, First Master, please help yourself. I still have things to do, so I won't say much. With that, Chu Luiwei turned around, intending to start reconstructing the legendary three-eyed eagle's physical body. She didn't mind this person watching. Anyway, no matter what, she would do what she had to do. However, at this moment, the man spoke again. Chu Luiwei stopped what she was doing and turned to look at him. First Master, do you have anything else to say? There was a hint of a smile in the man's voice. You help me guard this thing. As a reward, I will also do you a favor. Do you want to take off the armor on your body yourself, or do you want me to help you? Chapter 795. Pure Gold Armor? Chu Luiwei lowered her head and glanced at it. Just now, the two Tian baby had broken through the pure gold armor and left an inch-long crack on it. What did he mean? Your armor is not bad. If it's damaged, its defense will be greatly reduced. It's really a pity. Hearing this, Chu Luiwei asked with some uncertainty. Are you planning to help me repair this armor? The other party nodded slightly. You don't trust me? Chu Luiwei shook her head. That's not it. If you can help me, I don't know how to thank you. Previously, she had been worried about the damage to the pure gold armor. Generally speaking, if a yuan instrument was damaged, its effect would be greatly reduced. Most ordinary yuan instruments would be thrown away directly, while the higher-grade ones would be repaired as much as possible. And this had high requirements for the person who repaired it. Very few people could do it perfectly. Therefore, the final result was usually barely satisfactory. Chu Luiwei didn't expect that he would take the initiative to help. Judging from his strength, he might be an expert in this aspect. Chu Luiwei hesitated for a moment before agreeing. Based on her current level, she couldn't completely repair the pure gold armor. She might as well let him give it a try. Anyway, the pure gold armor recognized its master. She wasn't worried that he would do anything. If he wanted to snatch something, he would have done it long ago. Why wait until now? Chu Luiwei had a thought, and a layer of faint golden light appeared on her body. Then, this light flew out and condensed into the shape of an armor in front of her. She waved her sleeve and sent the pure gold armor out. That man raised his hand, and the pure gold armor obediently landed in his hand. Rong Xiu looked at the pure gold armor in his hand and sighed. He wanted to help his wife, but he had to find such a dignified reason. It was tiring. He only took a glance and immediately saw the damaged part of the pure gold armor. He couldn't be more familiar with this thing. Back then, in order to help her refine those glass barriers, he had done a lot of research. However, he still had to go through the formalities. Chu Luiwei watched as the other party held the pure gold armor in his hand. After examining it for a while, he prepared to make his move. A wisp of black origin power flew out from his palm and rapidly transformed into a cluster of flames. With a flick of his finger, the black flame flew to the damaged part of the pure gold armor and began to burn. This person seems to be extremely proficient in this Dao. Taizu's voice suddenly rang out. Chu Luiwei had actually seen through this. After all, she had personally polished the Cloud Sky Copper Sword before. Around the black flame, the pure gold armor glowed faintly. Then it became much softer. Chu Luiwei was secretly amazed. This person's control over the power of flames could be said to be peerless. There's still a little at night, about 10 o'clock. Everyone can look at it together tomorrow. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 796. Mystic Forest. A white lion was floating quietly in midair. Qin Yi and the rest looked up at it. After a while, Lei Laosi couldn't help but ask, "Big brother, what kind of fiend is this? Why is it staying up there all the time?" They originally thought that it was going to charge down, but it actually stopped there after circling around twice. It didn't leave or come down. This caused the few people below to be at a loss as to what to do. Qin Yi also found it strange. Previously, he felt that there was a commotion in the mystic forest, and then this white lion appeared. When it stopped in midair, there wasn't any commotion in the surroundings. He could basically confirm that the commotion just now was caused by its arrival. However, he couldn't quite tell what kind of fiend it was and didn't know why it didn't do anything after coming here. However, judging from the current situation, it didn't seem to have any murderous intent, so it probably didn't come for them. Ignore it first. Alright. It's a legendary fiend after all, so we have to be careful. Lei Laosi scratched his head and muttered, a fiend that looks like a legendary fiend. Why have I never heard of a divine beast that looks like a white lion? When Yi Ranran heard this, he couldn't help but say, Big brother Lei, is that a white lion? Its body seems to be yellow. Xue Xue, who was blocked outside by its master, was filled with resentment. It couldn't advance or retreat and secretly thought that its life was tough. When it heard this, its heart instantly trembled, and it couldn't wait to run away immediately. How embarrassing! Its originally perfect snow-colored fur was now stained with countless layers of yellow sand and became a dirty yellow color. Xue Xue roared resentfully. The forest shook instantly. However, the few people below weren't affected much. Yi Ranran was shocked and tugged at Mu Hongyu's sleeves. Hongyu, why do I feel like it's angry at me just now? It was originally a white lion, and it came from the Red Moon Desert, which is why it became like this. It definitely heard what you said just now, so it's naturally unhappy. Qin Yi turned around and explained. Don't forget that legendary fiends have almost the same level of intelligence as humans. Yi Ranran shrank back. So even divine beasts care about such words. Mu Hongyu gently patted her shoulder. Don't worry, Ranran. I don't think it has any ill intentions towards us. Although it roared, none of them were affected by this power. It could be seen that it had deliberately avoided it. Only then did Yi Ranran feel relieved. Suddenly, Chang Wanzhou stood up. His movements were very fast and even a little hurried, which immediately attracted the attention of a few people. Qin Yi seemed to have predicted something. What's the situation? Chang Wanzhou's eyes seemed to sparkle. I think she should be coming out soon. The West Hill. Imperial Palace, Huayang Palace. Shengguan Wan was leaning against the bed. Chan Yi was kneeling beside her, feeding her medicine. Your Highness, this is the last decoction for today. Please drink it. As Chan Yi spoke, she carefully scooped a little with a spoon and brought it to Shengguan Wan's lips. Shengguan Wan's lips were pale as she weakly drank the medicine. The moment she took a sip, her slender brows immediately knitted tightly together. The bitter and fishy taste rushed straight at her, almost choking her. She forced herself to swallow this mouthful of medicine. Her stomach churned again, and she almost spat it out. But in the end, she still forced herself to swallow it. Chani didn't dare to say anything else and continued to feed her medicine carefully. By the time Chan Yi finished feeding her this bowl, a thin layer of sweat had already formed on her forehead. She hurriedly put the things away and smiled pleasingly. Physicians was said that your body has already taken a turn for the better. After you use this medicine today, you'll have to change the dressing tomorrow. As long as you rest well, your body will definitely recover as soon as possible. When Shengguan Wan heard this, she seemed to be unmoved. Gradually, a hint of mockery appeared in her eyes. She slowly touched her face and asked softly, "What did he say?" Then did he say when the scars on this consort's face would heal? Chan Yi lowered her eyes. Physicians was said that the scars on your face are a little troublesome and that you need more time. Shengguan Wan sneered. Do you really think this consort is stupid? Chan Yi paused. Your Highness, you're very fortunate. You'll definitely have a way. You may leave. Shengguan Wan was already tired of hearing this kind of argument, so she waved her hand in annoyance. Chan Yi could only take her leave. Then this servant will stand guard outside. If there's anything you need, feel free to tell the servant. After saying that, she respectfully left. The moment the door closed, Shengguan Wan's expression instantly turned cold and resentful. Actually, her face was covered in scars right now, so she couldn't make any sort of expression. She also didn't dare to move carelessly for fear of tearing open the scabs on her face again. She could only vent all her emotions through her eyes. In the past few days after returning to Western Tomb, she had been living a life worse than death. That day, after that torment, her vitality had been greatly damaged, so she could only lie in bed to recuperate. She had used up a lot of her origin power, but fortunately, her Yuan meridian hadn't been damaged. This made Shang Wanwan feel a little better. But in the end, she discovered something even worse. The scars on her face seemed to be much more serious than normal wounds. No matter what method she used or what medicine she tried, there didn't seem to be any obvious effects. Every time she thought it was going to heal, it would mysteriously fester again. This happened over and over again. Her face was already completely unrecognizable. As a result, she could only hide here and not come out to meet anyone. Shang Wanwan was both angry and afraid. If her face really couldn't heal, what would she do in the future? She could still delay it for now, but she would definitely have to come out in the future. Especially since her wedding with Jianghu was getting closer and closer. On the day of the wedding, she still had to meet all the civil and military officials. Knock knock. A somewhat hurried knocking sound suddenly came from the door. Your Highness, this servant has something to report. What could happen at this time? Shang Wanwan frowned. Come in. Chani pushed the door open and walked in quickly. Her expression was a little strange. Just as she walked to Shang Wanwan's bed, she directly knelt down. Your Highness, the prince consort and the others are back. Shang Wanwan was shocked. How could they be so fast? How long had it been? Not even half a month, right? Could it be that they had retrieved the dancing lotus so smoothly? Where are they now? I heard that the prince consort was injured and has returned to the Jianghu residence to recuperate. The others are waiting for you in Minghua Palace. Shang Wanwan's heart sank and she quickly asked, has the dancing lotus been retrieved? Digression. Good night, everyone. Tomorrow at 12 o'clock, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 797. Chan Yi hung her head even lower. It seems like there isn't. If they had succeeded in retrieving it, they would definitely send news immediately. But now, Jianghu had returned to the Jianghu residence to recuperate, and the others were already waiting in Minghua Palace. No one mentioned the dancing lotus. Basically, it was certain that they had returned empty-handed this time. Shang Wanwan suddenly sat up straight. Shocked and furious, she widened her eyes and spoke sternly. Nonsense. These people are all top figures in the Tianling dynasty. How can there not be anything? Zhenshai, Yuqi Song, Song Wan. Which one of them wasn't a famous figure? Even Grand Tutor Xiahou Rong was a peak Stage 7 warrior. When these people joined forces, their strength was terrifying. How could there be no gains? With this movement, Shang Wanwan's injuries started to hurt again. The scab on her face cracked again, and blood slowly flowed down. It was very painful. She sucked in a cold breath. Her body was in a terrible condition, and with her anger attacking her heart, she directly fell backward. Your Highness! Chani exclaimed and hurriedly went forward to support her. Your Highness, you have to recuperate properly. Don't get angry. Shang Wanwan's face was pale, and 2 balls of flames seemed to be burning in her eyes. She pushed her away. Get lost. Useless trash. Get lost for this consort. Don't get angry? How could she not get angry after hearing this news? Chan Yi hurriedly knelt down again. Actually, she was also shocked when she heard this news just now. Who would have thought that these people would return empty-handed after joining forces? Chan Yi had already expected Shang Wanwan's reaction, but she had no choice. This was a serious matter, and she didn't dare to hide this from Shang Wanwan. Besides, could this kind of thing be hidden? Jian Shai and the others were still waiting in Minghua Palace. Why, Your Highness, you must calm down. Minghua Palace is still waiting for you to preside over the situation. It wasn't just Minghua Palace. Now that Jianghu had returned to his residence to recuperate, there were bound to be many things that Shangguan had to deal with personally. When Shangguan thought of this, her mind was in a mess. Preside over the overall situation? Was she supposed to meet people with her current face? Shangguan was full of resentment. She couldn't figure it out. Everything was fine before, so why did everything suddenly become so out of the blue? She had thought that after setting the wedding date, she would be able to wait for the wedding in peace. But in between, things kept happening one after another. Her face, Jianghu's wound, the black cavalry with heavy casualties. There was also the dancing lotus that couldn't be retrieved no matter what. Once the news got out, she didn't know what people would say about her incompetence. Chapter 798. Yuchi Song nodded. That's good too. The third princess has a precious body, so we naturally have to take good care of her. The palace servant didn't expect them to say this and looked troubled. Miss Chani only said to invite Sect Master Song. I don't dare to make a decision. In the palace, who didn't live under Chani's orders? Chani had always been very strict with matters related to the third princess. If he brought these two over, Chani wouldn't dare to say anything about their status, but his own safety was hard to say. Jian Shai sneered and said jokingly, Chani trusts Chani deeply. We all know that Chani is deeply trusted and valued by the third princess. However, in the end she is only a servant girl. Could it be that we need her permission to see the third princess? The palace servant hurriedly knelt down. That's not what I meant. It's just, what's there to just about? We're also concerned about the third princess's health, so we specially went to visit her. If the third princess really can't see us when we reach Huayang Palace, we naturally won't force her. This sentence made the palace servant speechless. It was fine if it was others, but Jian Shai and Yuchi Song were both top celestial physician in the Tianling dynasty. It was indeed reasonable for them to propose to take a look at the third princess. Xiahou Rong frowned slightly and said, Actually, we don't have to go. After all, there are still Zhou Mingxi and a few other lords in the palace with superb medical skills. If we go now, we might disturb them instead. Yuchi Song interrupted him indifferently. Everyone is very worried that the third princess hasn't come out for a long time. Now, the eldest young master is injured and bedridden. If no one comes out to preside over the situation, it will be chaotic sooner or later. We're doing this for everyone's sake. Could it be that we'll harm the third princess? At this point, what else could the palace servant say? He could only bite the bullet and agree. Xiahou Rong's lips moved. He wanted to continue stopping them, but he couldn't think of any reason. Jian Shai glanced at him and chuckled. Lord Xiahou, you don't look too good. Are you tired from this trip? Why don't you go back and rest? Xiahou Rong immediately rejected this suggestion. Since all of you are going, how can I not go? When they returned, Jiang Yuqing didn't want Jian Shai and Yuchi Song to enter the palace. Obviously, he didn't want them to see the third princess. Now that he saw that he couldn't stop them, he naturally had to follow them, just in case. Therefore, they followed the palace servants to Huayang Hall. Soon, they arrived at their destination. Chan Yi, who was anxiously waiting outside the door, froze when she saw them arrive. The palace servant jogged over and explained the situation to Chani while trembling with fear. The lords were worried about His Highness' health, so they came together and said that they wanted to take a look at His Highness. Chani was shocked. Are they going to treat third princess? How could that be? Now, the third princess could not be seen in public at all. If these people were to see this, who knows what would happen? She first bowed respectfully to them before tactfully saying that it wasn't convenient for Shangguan to meet so many people at once. Other than Song Wan, she could only invite the rest of them back. Jian Shai sneered in his heart. How was it that she didn't want to see people? She clearly didn't want to see him and Yuchi Song. At first, he was just curious, but now, he also felt that something was amiss. If Shangguan wasn't guilty, then what was? Even if her health wasn't good, it shouldn't be so difficult to see a few people. Besides, his and Yuchi Song's medical skills were definitely among the top few in the entire Tianling dynasty. Yet, Shangguan avoided them like snakes and scorpions. It was truly suspicious. Seeing that they were still unwilling to leave, Chani could only say, "Her Highness' health has always been taken care of by Lord Zhua and the rest. Could it be that you don't trust Lord Zhua?" "That's not the case." Jian Shai was about to refute when Yuchi Song suddenly said, "Lord Zhua, our medical skills are very good. Of course, we can trust Zhua Mingxi's medical skills. Since that's the case, let Her Highness rest well. We'll take our leave first." Then he really turned and left. Jian Shai froze for a moment and could only follow. Xiahou Rong heaved a sigh of relief and also left not long later. Soon, only Song Wan was left. Chani said, "Sect Master Song, please. Elder Song, why did you suddenly leave?" Jian Shai followed Yuchi Song and frowned, feeling perplexed. Elder Song must have also noticed that there was a problem. As long as he continued to ask, he would definitely be able to dig something out. However, Elder Song suddenly stopped. It was truly strange. Yuchi Song said, "Since she's unwilling to see you, why force her? Aren't you worried?" There was clearly something fishy going on. Who knew what exactly she was planning to do? Yuchi Song suddenly laughed. "Isn't she the most worried about herself?" Shangguan Wan was ambitious. Had only been gone for less than 2 years, but she actually planned to replace her and even wanted to directly ascend the throne while Her Majesty was still unconscious. Anyone could tell what she wanted. She couldn't wait to hold all the power in her hands, afraid that others would snatch it from her. If she hadn't really encountered some trouble, why wouldn't she come out to meet people for such a long time? So many important officials in court could wait for a day or two, but they definitely couldn't wait forever. At this time, the most anxious person wasn't anyone else but Shangguan Wan herself. Jian Shai froze for a moment before returning to his senses. "You're saying, on the other hand, I'm old and incompetent. I couldn't even retrieve a dancing lotus for the third princess. I'm really ashamed." After speaking, Yuchi Song continued walking forward. "There's still no trace of Lu Yu and the rest. I'd better return to Qingyuan Mountain and wait for their news. I won't get involved in other matters." Jian Shai clicked his tongue in his heart. Was Yuchi Song planning to spread the news that they didn't obtain anything from Dahuang Swamp? One could imagine how embarrassed Shangguan Wan would be then. He was indeed an old fox. In the past 2 years, Chongshu Pavilion had suffered a series of blows. Yuchi Song had also kept a low profile and endured a lot. He thought that they would never recover from this setback. Now, it was finally a little more fun. He had an idea and stroked his chin. "Hey, why don't I go and meet Zhua Mingxi? He might really be able to get something out of him." Almost overnight, the news that Shangguan Wan had led troops to Dahuang Swamp, suffered heavy casualties, and failed to bring back a single heaven and earth treasure for the emperor spread throughout Xiling City. Later, she even specially sent Jian Shai and a few other top powerhouses to go, but they returned empty-handed. Although the palace had tried their best to suppress the news, it was basically useless. After all, their appearance on the day of their return had already attracted a lot of attention. For a time, rumors spread everywhere, and everyone in the city was talking about it. At Chun Feng Restaurant, Jian Fengji leaned on the couch and smiled unrestrainedly. "This time, our third princess has completely lost face." Chapter 799. Shuelu held the pipa in her arms. Her slender hands swept across the strings, and a string of light and pleasant tunes followed. She had always played mournful or melancholic tunes, but rarely played such cheerful tunes. Moreover, there was a hint of a smile at the corners of her eyes, showing that she was in a very good mood. Who told her to puff herself up at her own cost? She only has herself to blame for her current situation. Shui Lu's fingertips paused, and her willowy eyebrows raised slightly. Does she really think that Dahuang Swamp is a place where everyone can go? Back when Dahuang Swamp was pacified, Princess's reputation soared. She also wanted to give it a try, wanting to establish herself as the world's most filial daughter. However, she didn't think about whether she had the ability to do so. De Huang Swamp was an extremely difficult bone to chew. It had been chaotic for hundreds of years, and it was only when Princess came to power that it was finally suppressed. Why did Shangguan think that she could command the winds and clouds in De Huang Swamp? She has been in this position for a long time, so it's only natural that she would have such thoughts. Jian Fengqi smiled disapprovingly, his eyes filled with contempt. Didn't you see how arrogant she had been in the past 2 years? Now, this head-on hit had finally caused her to bleed. Shui Lu'er's red lips curled slightly. This position isn't for just anyone. I don't think she can stay here for long. That's not necessarily true. Didn't you see that the wedding is going through the procedures now? Jian Fengqi smiled wickedly. I really want to see what kind of scene it will be on that day. Shui Lu'er glanced at him and asked curiously, weren't you very worried about Chu Lue and Mu Hongyu before? Why do you not look nervous at all now? That day, when he heard the discussions outside, his expression immediately changed. He jumped down from the window without a second word and grabbed the people to ask. Now, it seemed as if nothing had happened. Jian Fengqi's expression stiffened, and he twisted his neck uncomfortably. Even now, when he recalled his reaction that day, he felt that he had lost his composure. No, it couldn't even be described as simply losing his composure anymore. No one knew the fear that suddenly rose in his heart at that moment. Even now, it left a deep impression on him. However, these words were not easy to say. He coughed. I heard from Zhu Hong and the others that someone is helping Hongyu and the others. There shouldn't be any problems. Actually, the reason why he was so relaxed was mainly because he saw that his father and Yuchi Song were very calm. The disciples that these two doted on the most were still in the great desolate swamp, yet they didn't seem to be nervous at all, so he naturally felt much more at ease. Shui Lu'er nodded in understanding. From the looks of it, there shouldn't be any major problems. She pondered for a moment and said, by the way, I saw someone the other day, but I'm not sure of his identity. Jian Fengqi asked curiously, who is it? Shui Lu'er paused for a moment. She didn't say anything and only made a hand gesture. She gestured a 7. Jian Fengqi's expression suddenly changed. He sat up and stared at her. Are you sure? Shui Lu'er bit her lips. I don't know if it's him. Whether it was their appearance, figure, or aura, they were all different. But the look in his eyes was too similar. Where did you see him? Jian Fengqi hurriedly asked. Outside the Xiahou residence. He seemed to be investigating something too. Shui Lu'er frowned slightly. But if it's really him, how could he have changed so thoroughly? Jian Fengqi was shocked. How could an ordinary person have anything to do with the Xiahou residence? He was silent for a moment, then said, I've seen him before too. Digression. 6:00 mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 800. When was that? Shui Lu'er asked curiously. Why haven't I heard you mention such an important matter before? Jian Fengqi paused for a moment. Because I wasn't too sure at that time. Speaking of which, this happened back in country Yaochen. At that time, I accidentally saw a person's figure and vaguely felt that it was very similar. However, I didn't see him again after that, so I put this matter aside. He also wanted to see that person again to confirm that person's identity. However, no matter how hard he looked, there was no trace of that person. It had been quite a long time. If Shui Lu'er hadn't suddenly mentioned it, he really wouldn't have remembered. You said you saw that person in Xiahou residence? Yes. That day, I originally planned to go to Xiahou residence to inquire about the news. However, after meeting that person, I felt that it was a little strange, so I didn't make a move for the time being. Later, I found out that he was indeed secretly watching Xiahou residence. However, his movements were extremely concealed, and ordinary people wouldn't be able to discover him at all. If it wasn't for the fact that she felt that person was inexplicably familiar, she wouldn't have noticed that person. Jian Fengqi waved the bone fan in one hand and narrowed his eyes. Xiahou Rong is the grand tutor, and there are many guards inside and outside Xiahou residence. Outsiders definitely wouldn't watch them for no reason. Since he did this, there must be a purpose. If it's not that person, then we have to investigate carefully to see who else is planning to make a move on Xiaohu residents. However, if it's really him, then we have to investigate even more carefully. We don't even know when he came back. As Jian Fengqi spoke, he put away the bone fan and rested his chin on it. However, it seems that Jiang Yuqing has been really busy during this period of time. He actually didn't notice that something was wrong at all? Shui Lu chuckled. I heard that he went to Dahuang Swamp again and was injured. He's now recuperating in Jiang residence. I really don't know who did it. If I can meet him, I have to thank him properly. I heard from my father that that person is extremely powerful. Not to mention Jiang Yuqing, even the few of them are no match for him. Jian Fengqi's voice was much more serious. Shui Lu was a little surprised. Only then did she remember that Jian Shai also went with them, so he must know a lot of inside information. She widened her eyes in shock. It can't be? More powerful than those few people? What kind of person is that? In the entire Tianling dynasty, there are only a few of them. Jian Fengqi. My father and the others didn't see what he looked like. He was wearing a mask. But he seems to have only attacked Jiang Yuqing, and he's still rather polite to my father and the rest. Jiang Yuqing's injuries are quite serious this time, so he shouldn't be able to cause any trouble for the time being. Little Lu, find some time in the next 2 days to go to the Xiaohu estate and inquire about that person's background. Jian Fengqi stood up and patted his robe. As for me, it's been a while since I've been to the palace. Why don't I visit our honorable third princess? Jian Fengqi strutted into the palace and went straight to Huayang Palace. Unsurprisingly, he was stopped outside. Over the past few days, most of the people who asked to see Shangguan Wan returned without success. Only a few people were allowed to enter the main hall to see her. However, they didn't stay for long each time. The palace kept announcing to the public that Shangguan Wan was injured while helping His Majesty get medicine and needed to rest. Although everyone had many guesses, Huayang Hall was heavily guarded, so they couldn't know what was going on. They could only continue to wait. Jian Fengqi wasn't surprised by this result. Previously, his father had taken the initiative to ask for help, but was rejected by Shangguan Wan, let alone him. Jian Fengqi didn't pursue the matter. This young master is actually worried about the third princess. Since the third princess wants to rest, this young master won't disturb you any further. With that, he turned around, intending to leave. Chan Yi was a little surprised. Jian Fengqi's personality was actually very difficult to deal with. She thought that it would take a lot of effort to persuade him to leave, but she didn't expect him to leave so straightforwardly. However, just as he took half a step, Jian Fengqi turned around again, a careless and evil smile on his face. That's right, this young master suddenly remembered that this young master borrowed a few medical books from the Empress and didn't return them. Since I'm here today, I want to make a trip to Zhaoyu Hall and return them. Chan Yi's eyelids twitched. The Empress medical books? She's already dead. What's there to return? Moreover, it's been almost 2 years. No one would care about such a thing. She sized up Jian Fengqi suspiciously, feeling a little uneasy. However, Jian Fengqi had a smile on his face. He was no different from before. He didn't seem to be looking for trouble. Chan Yi pondered for a moment. Zhaoyu Hall was the Empress' resting place when she was alive. The third princess has always ordered people to watch over it carefully. No one is allowed to damage anything inside, and no outsiders are allowed to enter. This servant will help you ask for permission. Please wait a moment. Jian Fengqi nodded with a smile. Go on. Chan Yi turned around and entered the room. Jian Fengqi raised his brows slightly and looked around the courtyard casually. It seemed like there were some changes after not coming here for a while. Although he didn't come here often, he had a photographic memory. He remembered every blade of grass and every tree here clearly. He walked to a tree and leaned against it. Suddenly, the tip of his nose twitched. A faint bitter and fishy smell was faintly discernible. He lowered his eyes and took a look. This smell seemed to be coming from underground. He took a closer look, and his pupils suddenly shrank. He's going to Jianghu Hall? Sheng Guanwan subconsciously frowned. Why did he go there all of a sudden? Sheng Guanyu had been dead for so long. What's the big deal about returning a few medical books? However, Jian Fengqi wasn't easy to deal with. If she didn't agree to his request, who knew what trouble he would cause? In any case, he had always been barefooted and wasn't afraid of wearing shoes. He was very unbridled and arrogant. Sheng Guanwan didn't want to attract such a big trouble at this time. She waved her hand in annoyance. Since he wants to go, let him go. There are plenty of people in Jianghu Hall. If they discover anything strange about him, immediately report it. Sheng Guanwan rubbed her forehead. Actually, Jian Fengqi had a good relationship with her in the past. He had spoken up for her many times and helped her a lot. However, for some reason his attitude towards her had changed slightly after Sheng Guanyu's death. Although it wasn't obvious on the surface, Sheng Guanwan could feel it. She couldn't understand it. Jian Fengqi and Sheng Guanyu had been enemies in the past. They didn't like each other. Why did he suddenly become like this? Why was he going to Jianghu Hall now? Jian Fengqi gathered origin power in his palm. Just as he was about to reach out, he suddenly heard Chan Yi's vigilant voice behind him. "Young Master Jian, what are you doing?" asked the user of the mobile phone. A better reading experience came from Love Network. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.